Okay, today we're going to talk about very basic the distribution system of electricity to the stage light and a little tiny bit of how to control it, specifically with a light board. We got into this relationship just a tiny little bit during the video on basic electricity, and we're going to kind of pick up some of those thoughts now. But what I want to start with is talking about this idea of dimmer to circuit ratio. So there's two different kinds of circuiting. You can hard patch something, and what I mean by hard patch is we have kind of a homemade dimmer board set up here with our stage light fixture plugged into it, and this is a hard patch. That means that this light plugged into this circuit can only be controlled by this dimmer. So make sure the power button is on, and there you go. We've brought up that light in a hard patch scenario. A soft patch scenario would be for more of a computer-driven light board, and you can control multiples of different lights by typing in on the keypad which circuits are controlled by which channel. That allows you to have a lot of flexibility on the lighting board. The most common way circuits are wired to dimmers is what's called a 1-to-1 ratio. And so that means that circuit number 75, circuit number 76, circuit number 77, and so forth are controlled by dimmer number 75, dimmer number 76, dimmer number 77, and they're brought up on the light board by using channel number 75, channel number 76, and channel number 77. That where everything is the same as the same number all throughout the whole distribution system, that is what we mean by 1-to-1 ratio. So even in a 1-to-1 ratio, you can still have on the light board in soft patch, you can still have channel number 1 control lights number 10, 11, 12, 15. That's soft patch. There's a couple of ways around having a 1-to-1 ratio and being able to get more instruments per circuit. In the last video on basic electricity, we talked about using the West Virginia formula, the pi formula. You could determine that you could plug 4 575 watt bulb lights into one circuit. Now, the way around that is a couple of different things. You can have circuits that repeat. So in this particular plug-in strip, 74, 75, 76, and then you see it repeat, 74, 75, 76. So it gives you multiple places on the same plug strip to have something controlled on channel 74, 2 different locations. Now, that's no excuse for knowing that that circuit can only handle up to 24 watts of light. So just because you have all of the places to plug them in doesn't mean that you can put multiple lights beyond what the formula will allow. The other way that you can expand the ability to plug more lights into one circuit is you could have something called a Y splitter. See, it's shaped like the letter Y. where this end would plug into the little pigtail on the strip, and then it gives you two separate plugs, female plugs, to be able to plug in a stage light fixture. So that's another way around the 1-to-1 ratio of being able to control multiple lights on the same circuit. I'm going to show you the very basic lighting system that we use in the studio theater. It's specifically going to be this little Literonix LT4008 board, and this is as basic as it gets. So you have the lights, the stage lights, and they are plugged into, go up this ladder here, and I'll show you that they are basically hard patched into this little dimmer. And so there's 4 plugs on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you notice there's these things that look like little mic cables coming out of them. One of them goes to the light board, and the other one goes to the other dimmer on the other side of the room. And so this is a hard patch scenario that you don't have any ability other than channel number 1 to control what's plugged into light number 1. It does use, I talked about the little mic connector. It does use DMX. So if you look inside this, you can see there's 5 pins, whereas a regular microphone would be 3 pins. This 5 pins indicates that it is an address, a language, if you will, called DMX. And it is the DMX that gives you the flexibility of being able to control the light board or the dimmers from a rather more remote location than the light board. And so, quick little tour of this board. Notice there's a top row of channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there's a bottom row. They have the same ability. So notice there's an X right here and a Y right here. This means that this is a 2-scene preset. 2-scene preset. So whatever you put on the top row can be like scene 1, and whatever you put on the bottom row can be scene 2, and you change back and forth between them by using the X and the Y faders. So for instance, this is how this would work. Let's say that this, and this represented scene 1 of the lights. And the next scene might be something like that. Well, right now, both of these sliders are in the up position, which means that the X bank is what is live and active. And so if I want to, I can change between the X bank and the Y bank just by sliding these down. Now they're both down. That means that if you see the arrows, it shows you the direction of the intensity. So right now the arrow is pointing up, this one's all the way down. The arrow is pointing down, this one's all the way down. So that's how you know that the Y bank, right there, controlled by this, is active. And so what you just did is you crossfaded between X bank and then you crossfade between the Y bank. And you can see that it's even called crossfade. Now, the whole light board is controlled by this master. And the master's all the way up, the lights are at full power, but if that master comes down, everything blacks out to zero. This completely overrides anything else that is on the board. The other way, so that you can fade out using the master, or you see this little button right here, it says blackout. You could push that and everything would instantly black out without any kind of fade rate whatsoever. These little buttons down here are called bump buttons. So whereas these are the control channels, that the faders on the control channel that fade a light up or fade a light down, if you push these, it's automatically going to go to 100% no matter what this fader is set at. So this fader could be off. You could push the bump button and it would automatically go to 100% full on, or this one's already at 100%, so you wouldn't see any difference if you pushed that button. But this one is at like 50%. If you pushed it, it would go all the way to full. And there is such a thing as being able to put this particular board in what's called Y mode. And what that simply means is, instead of this being a two-scene preset where you can go from one scene of lights to the next, each of these sliders would be like they are in one row. And that's why you see these numbers start over again at 9, 10, 11, 12. You could have one bank of lights, 16, and that would just operate all of them at the same time. The easiest way to do it is to have it in the two-scene mode. And then the other thing that you can do on this is you can set a scene of lights, and then you can push the record button and you can assign it to a bump button. And then so each of these bump buttons becomes what's called a submaster. A submaster is when you cram a whole bunch of control channels on one single control fader, or in this case a bump button. So if you went to play back a show, you could push the bump button and it would go to that scene, or you could bring up the slider of lights, and so that would be scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, scene 5, scene 6, scene 7, and scene 8. And so that's the glory of having a submaster. Now I'm going to show you really quickly, let me turn out the lights, and I'm going to show you really quickly what the effect is of those things that I just talked about. So I'm in the X bank, I'm in that first scene of lights, and so if I crossfade to the Y bank, you can see it fades at whatever rate I pull those two sliders down. So if I have the master all the way up and I fade the master, everything fades out. And if I push the blackout button, you see how everything just goes out without a fade rate. And then this is what happens if you push the bump buttons. The lights flash every time you push a button. And so the bump buttons is a really nice way. You could do a little lightning effect, or you could do a little poor man's chase, where the lights look like they're chasing one another. This particular board does have some chasing features already built into it. You don't really need to know that for this lesson, but they're down here in the corner, and so you can go ahead and have everything out, and you can program chase number 1. See? And the rate is the button right next to it. So slows down, speeds up, and then there's also a second chase in there, which just looks like it's just a few lights. So anyway, you don't need to know that, but that's it for distribution.